Good afternoon. Today's hobby on JCT's Fascinating Hobbies is the continued strip down of the 1993 Packard Bell 486 SX25. Enjoy! Hello, and today we're as sort of alluded to in the title, we are looking at the continued strip down of the Hewlett Packard Force 486 SX25 PC. Now, once I got the cover off, there was quite a bit of dust inside, and as you can see, sort of a quick bit of action with the portable vacuum cleaner to get rid of the worst of it has actually revealed the motherboard underneath. Now, seeing as this machine actually came from a house where the occupants had been fairly heavy smokers, I honestly thought that the motherboard was just going to be caked with tar. But it seems that tar um, the tar pollution or sort of tar contamination, whatever you want to call it, has only really affected the power supply, and it actually transpires that the power supply is rather poorly. It's not currently powering up. The main fuse inside the power supply does look to be absolutely fine, doesn't appear to have any issues, but the power supply itself is not playing ball. With these older AT power supplies, you can actually they actually have a physical clicky power switch, so there's no sort of like soft touch or indeed any sort of power saving features or intelligence of these supplies. You can literally, even if the motherboard is disconnected, from what I remember, press the power button and the power supply will spin up. Obviously, the fan will come up and the power supply will be live. But in this case, no dice at all. The power supply is pretty dead. The first thing I'll probably be looking at with the power supply is actually taking a look at the power switch, running a bit of contact cleaner over it and seeing if we can get anywhere with that. In the meantime, I have actually purchased another AT power supply. It's actually a generic supply, not a specialised supply, which such as this one. If you look at the bottom of the screen there, you can see the plastic sort of rod coming out of the power supply, which goes through to the power switch on the front of the case, and that is sort of quite specialist to this particular case. As regards to strip down, so far we've taken out the hard drive and we've removed the floppy and IDE cables. This actually takes me back a bit with these IDE cables. In the last video I said that it was unusual to find IDE on board, and in this particular time it was. Usually you had IDE on a separate expansion card which went into one of the ISA slots. So to actually find a motherboard with IDE on board was not unusual, but it wasn't common. Usually boards that you bought from sort of a standard to the board manufacturer, you would actually have to have a separate IDE board which would then plug in to one of your ISA slots. As you can see here, the power supply is pretty grubby, and I've just put it to one side whilst I continue to clean the bare chassis of the machine in preparation of removing the actual motherboard itself. The blue lithium battery, that is something I'm debating on at the moment. It had a small amount of white deposits which all sort of cleanly wiped off, but I may actually unsolder the battery and replace it with a pair of double A's. So a little cradle with which you would sort of plug a pair of double A's into, just really to sort of prevent that battery from generally sort of exploding or leaking and damaging the board. As at the moment, touch wood, the board is in fairly good shape. As you can see, I'm unscrewing the motherboard at the moment, so there are several screws which go into sort of designated points on the board, and they're all coming out. The yellow cable to the top is actually for the keyboard lock, which is a nice little unusual feature you don't see much these days. And yeah, there we go. And the next sort of stage, which was a little bit tricky getting out actually, was actually removing the board. I subsequently discovered that the little plastic card locator to the front of the machine, which would be on the left hand side of the picture, can actually be removed, which does actually sort of yield quite a bit of flexibility for removing the motherboard itself. The actual metal cradle, which contains the 5¼ inch floppy drive, does not actually remove. It's actually riveted to the front of the case. And as you can see, removing the lock there, which has sort of made things a little bit easier. And you can see on the top left-hand corner of that motherboard those empty cache slots, which I was mentioning last time. Incidentally, I think those are 72-pin SIMs, which would actually sort of come in line with the thinking of the time. 30-pin SIM slots you usually found in sort of not 486s, sorry, you usually found them in 386s. Certainly the 386SX, which was a 32-bit CPU with a 16-bit front-side bus. You also had SIP RAM as well, which was very like SIMs, but instead of sort of just being a nice snap-in design, it actually had little pins, so you actually had to slot the whole thing into sort of a little row-type socket on the motherboard. Ultimately, it was the SIM system, single inline memory module, which was the standard for a number of years, all the way up to, I'm just trying to think now, all the way up certainly to the Pentium class machines. And there we go, and that is the end of today's video. Once again, thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe.